Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Brooke Mitchell, and today's webinar is Private Reserves, the Key to South Africa's Best Wildlife Viewing, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Lorraine Doyle. Thank you so much for being here today, Lorraine. Over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Brooke. It's always a pleasure to be able to do these presentations. So yeah, just as we were discussing before I started, well, just now we were talking. We may get some background audio from some lions that are calling in the immediate vicinity of where I'm staying. So if it happens, I might interrupt the presentation and just see if we can hear them. But as you said, so private reserves and the key to South Africa and wildlife viewing. So let's just see. My computer's been not too happy with me. Let's just see if it wants to move. Ah, there we go. Okay, so just perhaps a little bit of background. So I've been involved in this industry since 1997, 98. I had my own training company, Training Guides, for nearly 20 years, and then did an honours in environmental science. I'm working on a master's at the moment on black rhino. And so, yeah, have a long history and a real passion for the environment and the wildlife. I grew up in Zimbabwe, and so yeah, Africa has pretty much been nearly most of my life. So as you can see, always very happy to have a camera, and part of that is to be able to take photographs to share with guests who come on trips with us. So not everybody has a camera or wishes to take a camera with them. So that's one of the things that I try and do on the trips, is also just take some photos and share those on the portal with our guests. Okay, so if we just take a very sort of broad perspective and look at the difference between what is Southern Africa and what is South Africa. So Southern Africa, as you can see on this map here, is a region. So it's that whole section in blue. It varies from definition to definition. Some places will not include Angola, for example. But by and large, if you were to draw a line from the top of Angola across, anything south of that is considered the Southern African sub-region. Okay, so at the bottom of that is the country, South Africa, and that's essentially what this presentation is about in terms of the wildlife of this specific country and the sub-region as a whole. NatHab also does a trip into Zimbabwe, which is also obviously a Southern African safari, but not a South African safari. So most people will have some idea of where Johannesburg is. So sort of, I'm not sure if my cursor is showing up, but, oh, listen. They're quite far away, but it's pretty cool. So what I've done here is just to show where in South Africa we're actually going on this specific safari, and what the environment is like on that sort of whole trip. So we start in Johannesburg, and then we have a chartered flight which goes to Madikwe Game Reserve. We spend 2 nights in Madikwe, and then we go on a 3-hour drive to Marataba Park. We spend 3 nights there. Then we go on another chartered flight to ride across to the far eastern portion of the country on the borders of the Kruger National Park. So that whole big green area is the Kruger National Park. So we go to MalaMala within the Sabi Sands. We spend 3 nights there. Then we have a 1-hour drive, which is pretty much a game drive on the last day, to the airport at Skukuza within the Kruger National Park. And then we have a commercial flight back to Johannesburg on the last day. So as you can see, it's a relatively small area of a rather large country. And there is a reason for that. And that's linked to something that we refer to as biomes. So biomes are just large areas which are defined by the climate and the vegetation. And the area that we focus on is the largest kind of biome within South Africa, which is that whole brownie colored area. And that's the savanna biome. And so the savanna biome is a co-dominance between trees and grasses. And it's that environment that allows us to have the huge variety of plants, animals, birds, and so on that we would experience or want to experience on a safari. So if we come down, another place that people often go to on South African safaris as an extension is to Cape Town. And as you can see here, this goes into a much darker blue. So this is what is known as the fynbos biome. It's a little bit of Europe tacked on the end of Africa, has a Mediterranean climate, very, very different. The large green area here is very high lying, it's all grasslands. And then we have some other more specialized biomes, these pink ones, the Nama Karoo, and then also the succulent Karoo. But the focus and the reason that we only are exploring this really kind of relatively small area at the top of the country is purely because of the fact that this is where our savanna biome is and where all the animals that people coming on safari actually want to see. Okay, so this is just a little bit more. So I'm essentially zooming in more and more into the areas that we are going to. And when Natural Habitat put together this safari, they actually looked at some different types of areas within that greater savanna biome. And so we actually go to 3 different, really quite different environments within the savanna biome, each with its own unique set of animals. Okay, some are common across all. Some will occur only in one portion. So Madikwe National Park, where I've got, that sits where the elephant is, that's what we would call an arid savanna. So it's not dry enough to be desert, but it is very dry. And as a result, it has a very different environment to something like, for example, that's supposed to be a leopard. I know it looks a little more like a tiger, but the low-felt savanna, which is sitting where MalaMala is, a much moister, wetter area, much more lush vegetation, so a different suite of animals and birds. And then when we go to Marataba, that's kind of a mixture between the two, and it's called mixed bushveld. And so as a result of these destinations within the safari, it gives you a really nice broad perspective of the wildlife and of the greater savanna biome within South Africa. So some of this is linked to elevation. So I just put this in to just give you an idea. So when you fly into Johannesburg, you fly in, it's very high, sitting at about 5,700 feet. And we spend the rest of the trip dropping down in elevation until we come back to Johannesburg. So when we fly to Madikwe, we go down to 3,600, Marataba a little bit lower. And then when we get to MalaMala, we drop really quite substantially. So then when we obviously fly back to Johannesburg, then we go back up in elevation again. But these elevations and this division between east and west are the things that are going to give us the variety that we see when on this specific safari. Okay, so that hopefully just gives you a little bit broader context of where in Africa you are going, where the sub-region, the Southern African sub-region is, then where South Africa fits into that, and then where all of the different destinations that you're going to go to on this specific safari actually fall into. So then I've just got a few photographs to try and give you a sense of place of each of these places that you're going to. So I'll start with Madikwe because this is kind of how the safari portion of the trip is structured. So as you can see, it's quite, even on a sunset photograph, you can see it's quite sparsely vegetated, shrubby trees, and shortish grasses, what we would call thorn felt. So you'll hear the word felt used quite a bit. It comes from the Afrikaans word really for bushveld, for want of a better expression. So thornfelt, very shrubby, quite dense in places, some big open areas where you have clay soils underpinning it, and so more grassy areas. But this is your sort of typical Madikwe type of landscape. And then we go to a very, very different landscape when we go to Marataba. The mountain range that you can see in the back there is called the Waterberg, which literally translates water mountains. Very, very ancient sandstone mountains, which give rise to some really, really beautiful hues when we look at sunrise, sunset, and then quite large expanses of water. So, as I said, very different from the more dry Madikwe that we would have come from. So you can see here, again, sort of outcrops of the sandstone water areas, definitely quite a bit more lush, but still there's this whole mixture, some areas quite dense, other areas more open, but yeah, quite a different landscape. All of these landscapes, I just threw this in here for good measure. One of the really, really special things about Africa as a whole, but Southern Africa, we have the most extraordinary sunrises and sunsets. So yeah, really, from a photographic perspective and from just an experience perspective, they really are very special. And then this is at MalaMala. So as you can see, the elephants there come right up into camp. The edge of the swimming pool is where those chairs are. And here it becomes really a lot more lush. So more big trees. There's obviously the Sand River, which runs in front of the camp. And so, yes, it gives you a very different feeling to the other two places. Also very different rock types. So the whole of the low veld is underpinned by granite, gives rise to these rocky outcrops, very sandy soils, and yeah, these beautiful vistas. Lions are roaring again in the background. It's really cool. So yeah, so that hopefully just gives you a sort of an idea of what the landscapes look like in each different place. So obviously you're coming to Africa pretty much between beginning of June and October, which is primarily our winter and our spring. Not that we really get 4 seasons, but it is our cooler period of the year. So as a general principle, drier, but not always. And it can actually get really quite cool. So you'll see as I go through a few photographs now, that when NATAB send the packing lists and it says bring your winter down jackets with you, but actually it does get cold enough to be wearing them. So this photograph was taken in Madikwe. It's just some of the team, and so you do get days like this one, which was clearly quite a warm, sunny day, and so yeah, there's kind of no real evidence of any seriously warm gear. This was taken on landing, so this was a trip done, I think, in around July, end of July. So you can see kind of early morning-ish in this environment, light jackets, hats are always something that you should be bringing with to Africa. Our sun is very intense. So this was the plane landing at Madikwe's airstrip. Okay, and then there's proof that it does get really cold. So need for gloves. We do provide early morning, we will provide blankets, also hot water bottles. So the extreme cold only lasts for a couple of hours in the morning and the last portion of the afternoon, but it gets surprisingly cold. Especially Madikwe, because we're right on the edge of desert, and so the extremes of temperature are quite high. So it is worth bearing in mind that this actually, it does get cold. So this was taken this is the Sand River in MalaMala, but it was a nippy morning, and so as you can see, wearing jackets, they are necessary. Beanies as well. So I think people's perception when they're coming to Africa very often is that they're coming to the tropics. So remember, we are quite far south of the equator. We're south of the Tropic of Capricorn. And so our winter months are chilly. So during the day, it's pleasant. But at night and in the early morning, it really does get cold enough to be wearing this kind of gear, which many guests have said to me over time they kind of really didn't believe they would need, but in actual fact, you definitely do need. So I said for the most part it's dry. Well, sometimes it's not. So especially towards the end of the season, we sometimes get rain showers. As you can see, we do provide on the vehicles, there are like rain ponchos and rain jackets. So we try and keep people dry, as dry as possible. But yeah, just that it's sometimes we do get these kind of downpours, and it can be chilly maybe for a day while the rain is going through. But after that, it often warms up again. But yeah, so just when you're packing, bearing in mind that rain gear is something that we may require. Okay, so how do we go places? So we use a mixture of light aircraft with a charter company. So the first transfer that we do is actually called a scheduled charter. So it has a set departure time from an airport in Johannesburg. Sometimes we might have a few other people on the plane with us going to different lodges in Madikwe. But yeah, so basically it's usually it's a plane called a caravan or a grand caravan, sort of takes about a maximum of 10 people, to give you an idea. Okay, then while we're actually on the safaris, most of the vehicles look like this one. Sometimes we have roofs on them, especially as it starts getting a lot hotter. just for the sun, but in the cooler part of the year, there are no roofs on the vehicles. MalaMala never put roofs on their vehicles. But yeah, so this is kind of the standard vehicle that we will utilize for our game viewing experiences. And then we use vehicles similar to this one. I didn't actually have a photograph from a trip, but these are the sorts of vehicles when we do the transfer from the road transfer from Madikwe to Marataba. We use two, depending on the number of guests, but 2 or 3 of these vehicles, which are SUVs, which are much more comfortable to navigate the road, which is not the greatest road between Madikwe and Marataba. But yeah, it's a relatively comfortable ride using these types of vehicles. And then when we fly from Secluded Airport in Kruger back to Johannesburg, we fly on a commercial flight. Airlink is the usual airline that we use. And it's an Embraer. It's one of these Embraer aircraft that hold about 50 or 60 people. So just to give you an idea of the types of transportation that we use. And then, so what are the places that you're going to call home? What do they look like? So this is the Fairlawns Boutique Hotel in Johannesburg. So this is where we spend the first night. It's a beautiful hotel with quite a lot of history. Every room in the hotel has a completely different decor. So yeah, a beautiful and very comfortable boutique hotel. And then once we get to Madikwe, we stay at Madikwe Safari Lodge. They have a number of different lodges. So we stay at one called Kapano normally. And we have that little lodge to ourselves. There's no other guests in this specific lodge, which is really nice. When we get out into the reserve on Game Drive, yes, there are other vehicles because there are quite a few other lodges. But when we're back in the camp, we have our own camp. And then this is the camp at Marataba, it's a slightly bigger camp. It's a combination of brick and mortar in the main building, which you can see where the fire pit is, and then luxury tented accommodation where the rooms are. So it's kind of a combination of both. It's a slightly bigger lodge, so there are other guests in camp when we are there. But obviously when we're out on safari, we always have a private vehicle. And so during those times, there are no other people. And then this is MalaMala. So MalaMala is really the oldest safari destination in South Africa. And it's very much a old-styled camp, thatch, and yeah, big kind of open wooden decks. But yes, a very comfortable camp. But what I guess we would consider more old school in terms of its structure. As I said, just because it's been around as the original photo destination in Southern Africa. So it's been around for nearly 60 years. So I know that something that for a lot of people when they travel is of concern is things like food. So these destinations that we go to all have really good cuisine, use a lot of as local as possible fresh produce. They are pretty good at being able to deal with vegetarian requests, gluten-free. Vegan is a little more challenging just because of remote locations. So it could be that if you are vegan, that perhaps the choices might be a little limited. But there's always a good variety of food, always freshly prepared, and staff are always more than willing to go above and beyond to try and accommodate people and whatever their specific requirements are. It is important, though, that you notify Natural Habitat upfront before traveling of any dietaries, because if there are specific dietaries, it does take a little bit more organization on the ground for the lodges, and just so that we make sure that we have what is required when we get there. It's really good to know. All water is either bottled water or water that you will have from special dispensers to fill up your water bottle. At no place is the water dangerous to drink. It just is usually highly mineralized because it comes from boreholes or wells. And so it's advisable not to drink it. It's perfectly fine to brush your teeth with. And as I say, if you do happen to drink it, nothing's going to happen. It's just highly mineralized, and therefore it's much better if people just drink the water from the dispensers. So this was just to show you, so one of the things we do kind of around food is we do things like sundowners. So we take out some drinks and snacks. We find nice locations, and we have drinks while we watch the sun go down. And then a lot of meals are eaten outside if the weather is nice. This is the deck at MalaMala. So yeah, trying to make as much use of sort of the beautiful outdoors as possible. If the weather is inclement, so if it is raining or really cold, then obviously we use indoor options. But as far as possible, it's really nice to be able to kind of sit outside. Okay, so now you've essentially signed up for this, you've come to Africa on safari. So what does that actually look like? So what are the activities? What are the things that we're going to be doing? And so the whole idea is that early in the morning and late afternoon, those are the times that we go out looking for animals. The primary reason for that is that many animals are active early in the morning, late in the afternoon, especially when it starts getting warmer, because the heat of the day, most animals will just go and find somewhere to lie down and relax and sleep. So this photograph was taken in Madikwe. We were actually in a different vehicle. This was another vehicle viewing this cheetah. But a lot of the animals have become quite habituated to vehicles. And so provided they are treated with respect and they are allowed to approach a vehicle, they can come quite close. So it is good safari etiquette that we park a respectable distance away, and if the animal chooses to approach us, that's okay. But we don't drive and go and park right on the tail of an animal. That's not kind of ethical behavior. Never let animals touch a vehicle. So some of the pictures that do the rounds on social media of animals jumping into vehicles, that's really, really dangerous, not good safari practice. And so that's not something that we would certainly sanction or encourage. So we also have an option at Marataba to go on a little flat pontoon type of boat, which is really nice to be able to do photography of things like hippos and so on. So that's also part of it. And then just to give you an idea, because what happens is people show you photographs and people are often unaware or don't know, is somebody using a big zoom lens all the time? Are the animals actually just a speck on the distant horizon? The answer is no. in these environments within South Africa. Like I said, we are very fortunate that we can have some quite close encounters. So here there was a rhino walking up the road. So yeah, this was taken at Marataba. Yeah, just watching an elephant herd. We're far enough away. They've got plenty of space that they want to go and walk down the road. But yeah, very special to be able to sit and watch these animals doing what they do. So the whole idea behind ethical safari viewing is that the animal should continue with its behavior as though you weren't there. We really don't want to be causing any changes in their behavior as far as is possible. So we can just get to see what they do naturally. So lots of opportunities for photographs, using your binoculars. So these are all good things to remember to pack. Like I said, even when there's a roof on the vehicle, always a really good idea to have your hat, your sunscreen, because yeah, it does get pretty toasty. So this was at MalaMala. There was a hyena that just came out in front of us and started walking down the road. Yeah, we just let her carry on walking down the road. So this was a hyena den at MalaMala. Baby hyenas are some of the cutest creatures. Disney does them no favors. They're incredibly intelligent and terribly cute, and they are amongst the most inquisitive animals I've ever encountered. So these little ones will come up and have a look at what you are, but mom always keeping a watchful eye. But yeah, very, very inquisitive little guys. So on the South African safari, we are very, very privileged to be able to see rhinos. Many destinations in Africa now, rhinos are no longer in the parks. They've been poached, unfortunately, over recent decades. Reintroductions are happening, but in many places, rhinos are not something that we get to see. So these are white rhinos or square-lipped rhinos, big grazing animals. So those are a lot more common to see on safari. Black rhinos or the hook-lipped rhinoceros, much more difficult to find. They're much more secretive. They live in thick habitats. There's also a lot less of them left in the world. White rhinos, we estimate probably around 40,000 globally. Black rhinos around 5,000. So yeah, very low population densities. So one of the options, depending on the group and the weather, is to be able to take a short bushwalk or walking safari. It's not a really hectic hike. You can't walk at any pace through wild areas where there are potentially elephants, lions, and other things. It's more of what we would consider an interpretive experience. It is a very special experience. It's kind of extremely humbling. It really does put into context how small we are in the greater scheme of things in Africa when we get down on foot. The idea is not to go out and encounter the big game. It is more to go and just experience the smaller things, look at tracks, footprints, and just have a sort of an interpretive experience. So that is available. We usually do it, if we do it, we do it at Marataba. It's the most conducive environment to do it. And as you can see, closed shoes, not necessarily heavy hiking boots, but closed shoes, water bottles, backpacks if you're going to want to carry a camera or something, are the sorts of things that are needed to do the trip or to do a walk like this. Okay, and then obviously we get to the portion of why everybody wants to come to Africa, and that's obviously the wildlife in all its various forms. So the next few slides that I've got here are simply photographs. All of them have been taken on Secluded South Africa trips. So these are all the sorts of animals that you could expect to see on a safari. Obviously, there are never any guarantees, and some animals are much more elusive than others. But these, as I said, are the sorts of animals that we would expect to be able to encounter. So obviously, this rather handsome gentleman with his very, very nice mane, beautiful male lion. Oh, sorry. So this animal is an antelope called an inyala, and we only see this when we go to MalaMala. It's an animal that occurs only in the moister east portions of the country. And it had picked up a fruit called a sausage pod. And this is actually quite unusual behavior because sausage pods, I think you can probably even see in this photograph, they're very, very fibrous fruits. Not very nutritious nor very palatable, I don't think. But anyhow, this is a male. Only the males have horns, the females don't. And yeah, he clearly decided that this was something he wanted to try. I've seen baboons eating them. I've seen hippos pick them up, but this was the first time I'd ever seen an inyala pick one up and try it. So just another beautiful male lion. Obviously, these are the sorts of creatures that are the big predators, are things that a lot of people want to see. But there are so many other things that are part and parcel of these ecosystems that we get to see as well. So this is what MalaMala is known for. So this is obviously this is a leopard. These are incredibly elusive animals normally. So in ordinary situations, when people come on or go on a safari and they say they want to see leopard, it's usually the one thing that the guide will kind of internally cringe and go, well, we'll try, because they are elusive. They're nocturnal usually, they're secretive, but because MalaMala has been a game reserve for so long, the leopards there have become very habituated. And so it is much more likely that you will be able to see a leopard on a safari because we go to MalaMala than otherwise. We do see them sometimes. I have seen them at Madikwe. I have seen them at Marataba, but much more rarely than you see them at MalaMala. Truly beautiful cats, in many ways the ultimate predator. And just interestingly, have a look at how long their whiskers are, much longer than those of a lion. Lions have pretty short whiskers, and one of the things is the whiskers of a leopard are pretty much the widest part of the body. And so these are sensory organs that they are using. And because they live in these wooded habitats and are often kind of going into smaller areas that are quite tight, their whiskers allow them to know how wide the area is and will they be able to get through it. So it's one of the things that photographically always stands out for me. We have a real variety of beautiful birds in South Africa. So this is a bird called a malachite kingfisher, little kingfisher. So we have a lot of very colorful birds. So we don't really have songbirds per se, but we have very vibrantly colored birds. So yeah, there's always There's always something to see, even on a quiet day. If the mammals are not out and about, the birds will usually provide you with something to observe. So cheetahs. So cheetahs are also very endangered globally, about 7,000 left in the world. Lots of reasons for that, not least a genetic bottleneck that happened some 50 or 70,000 years ago. But Madikwe and Marataba are both good opportunities for seeing cheetahs. Less so MalaMala because it has a very high density of lions and leopards. Cheetahs do not do well when there are other large predators. So they're either referred to as the smallest of the large cats or the largest of the small cats. And as you can see, they have this very petite build, even as adults, completely built for speed. So they've sacrificed a lot in order to be fast, but it means that they have very little defense, and so they're often killed by other predators. So plains zebra, always one of the kind of favorite animals for people to see. I think just this incredible black and white striping, very unique looking animals. So all three areas that we go to have zebra populations. So young of anything are always cute and always good photographic subjects. So this was just a mom lion or a lioness with one of her cubs. So South Africa, or Southern Africa as a whole, is quite, we don't have a very rich primate assemblage. We only have really that we will see kind of two main species. So this is a chacma baboon, adult and a little youngster. And then the other one that we see are vervet monkeys. But pretty much those are really the only primates. So we have no great apes in Southern Africa, so no chimpanzees, no gorillas, none of those species. So these are the primates that you could expect to see. Very mischievous, hugely entertaining to watch because, yeah, they get up to all sorts of antics. Then another real favorite, I think, of many, many guests are giraffe, simply because they are probably the most improbable looking animal. These ridiculously long legs, very long neck, very awkward stance when they're trying to drink. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful animals. These incredibly long eyelashes to protect their eyes when they're feeding. And then the African elephant. All three places have got these beautiful, beautiful creatures. I think they're probably one of my favorites. Just such sentient beings, incredibly intelligent, and yeah, just a joy to watch. And then another animal that I have a real soft spot for, so another spotted hyena. Like I said a short while ago, really vilified by many programs, like Disney made out to be the bad guys. They're not really. They are scavengers, but they're also incredibly efficient hunters. They're actually more efficient or more successful at hunts they initiate than lions by a long way. And yeah, very, very intelligent creatures. So we do see some reptiles. So things like crocodiles. The only place we really see crocodiles is at MalaMala. There are a couple of small ones at Madikwe, and a couple of small ones at Marataba. But the larger crocodiles, if we do see them, occur along the Sand River. So there are some reptiles. Another little cute hyenas. And then one of the specials that we don't necessarily get to see every time, but this is a bat-eared fox. And this is something that we see pretty much, if we are going to see it, we only ever see at Marataba. So they have these tiny little teeth that actually pretty much eat insects. But yeah, very cute with their little Zorro masks. And then this is a female Inyala. So the male Inyala was the grayish color one, or chocolate brown, with the horns, the one eating the sausage pod fruit. The females are this color, and obviously this is a little lamb. So giant kingfisher. So this is actually a kingfisher that fishes. Not all of our kingfishers fish. Quite a few species actually only eat insects. So yeah, another lovely bird species. Hippos. The main place that we see hippos is at Marataba. Sometimes we see them at MalaMala. It just depends on the river. So hippos need quite deep water, even though they can't swim. So they just need to be able to completely cover their bodies in water. And so in areas where water dries up during the dry season, hippos don't do very well. But yeah, certainly something that we will see at places like Marataba. And then the very, very elusive African wild dog or painted wolf. I think they've tried to change the name. Again, another animal that is critically endangered, and one that we certainly do not see on every trip. They travel huge distances, and the best time that we are, or the time we are most likely to be fortunate enough to see them, is if they are denning on site. So yes, it's something that is on many guests' bucket lists. Sometimes we are lucky, but yes, it's definitely not a guaranteed sighting. African buffalo. This one got photobombed by it looks like a heron. But yes, so quite a lot of buffalo herds. Primarily we see them in Marataba and MalaMala. But yes, definitely something that you are more than likely to see. Another really beautiful bird. So this is little bee eater. So as I said, all our birds are colorful rather than songbirds. So we are very fortunate sometimes at MalaMala to see leopard cubs. They're very photogenic, and yeah, they're always a great deal of fun to watch. And yeah, that's the end of my official presentation. So yeah, open to questions. Back to you, Brooke.
Thanks so much, Lorraine. That was beautiful, and ending on a leopard cub photo. That was perfect. Well, great, everybody. So, in your control panel there is a little questions box, and we'll take questions for about the next like 8 or 9 minutes. So go ahead and plop them in, and I will pass them over to Lorraine. Alrighty, let's go through here. Well, first question, this is pretty fun. So, since people could hear lions in the background, where are you currently located, Lorraine, so people have an idea?
Okay, so I live on a game reserve. Yeah, so I work when I'm not doing natural habitat work. I work as an ecologist and the wildlife manager for a reserve in Zululand in South Africa. So kind of on that map, so quite far south on the map. So yeah, that's where I'm based.
Great. Awesome. All right, everyone, let's go through here. So I am getting a few questions about a minimum age. Do you by chance know what the minimum age is to join this group trip?
So because we have private vehicles, if it's like a group, so you saw there was on the one trip there was a little boy that was a family trip. I think he was 8 or 9. Um, so normally individual lodges will have a minimum age, usually around 12 years of age. And if we do any walking, the minimum age is 16. Um, so those would be your kind of your minimum ages. It's it becomes more dangerous to take young children on safari vehicles, um, because if they cry, or for whatever reason get distressed, let's say, and we're in a sighting, particularly things like lions, they'll actually react because they'll associate it with being with a cub. That seems to be the behavior, and then they'll try and protect it. So yeah, it just creates challenges on vehicles. Also, game drives are usually about 3.5 hours long, and so for younger kids, it can be quite an ask for them to to kind of sit still for those periods of time. So I would say if you're going on a vehicle, probably around about 12. And then if anybody wants to actually get out and do walking, then the minimum age is 16.
Great. And there are a couple people asking too if there is anything more specific that you're looking for. There's also custom safaris too. So we have a great team that could potentially put together your own safari. So I'll just throw that out there as well, because I do actually have a couple questions about minimum ages to take multi-generation families, which would be so special.
Mm.
Great. Okay, let's continue down here. So lots of questions about different times of year to see different species. So what are some of the best months to see baby animals?
So many of our animals are not they're not seasonal breeders. So lions, leopards, elephants, rhinos, hippos, all of those will have young, or can have young at any time throughout the year. So things like impalas, wildebeest, buffalo to an extent, those youngsters are usually born in our summer months. So on a safari like these ones, when we're trying to use the winter months, which are cooler and less vegetatively dense, and have less water around so that animals actually come to water holes to drink, so we have better chance to see them, those sort of species you're less likely to see. But all of the ones I mentioned before, because they don't breed seasonally, um, all of those photographs were taken at different times, right the way from June through October. And so there's chance to see babies pretty much at all of those times. It's just the seasonal breeders that pretty much on any of the trips are going to be fairly sparse, for want of a better word.
Great. And staying on the species topic, how likely is it to see brown hyenas and or cheetahs?
So brown hyenas we do see very occasionally, mainly when we have seen them. We've seen them at Madikwe. Um, cheetahs are we've had good sightings in the last season I guided. We had really good sightings at Madikwe and at Marataba. Um, so you're more likely to see a cheetah, for example, than you are to see a brown hyena. So yeah, brown hyenas, wherever you have spotted hyenas, brown hyenas generally don't do well. Um, and as I say, the times that I have seen them, it's been primarily at Madikwe.
Fantastic. Now we're moving on to a packing question. Could you
Hmm.
elaborate on some packing tips and maybe clothing colors that people should pack or avoid, or any other tips that you can think of for that?
Um, so my suggestion would be bring layers. So don't have very heavy jackets and things. Have layers that you can put on and take off. Preferably neutral colors. Um, we prefer not to have bright psychedelic, orange and yellow and colors like that, just because they stand out quite a lot in the bush. Um, if we're walking, we prefer that people don't wear white or black, because again, those colors are colors that really, really stand out. So if you have muted greens, olives, khakis, browns, any of those sort of natural colors, light blues, those are the best sort of colors to wear. So that would be, and then when you're packing, because we do go in small aircraft, um, soft-sided bags are pretty much a must. We have dealt with larger suitcases, but they do pose some quite interesting challenges. Um, so yeah, from a packing kind of perspective, that would be my suggestion.
Fantastic. Next here, could you review what a typical day looks like, including average wake up times and going out on the first safari, and if that changes based on the season, and then maybe what the afternoon looks like as well?
Sure. So safari basically goes sleep, drive, eat, repeat. Um, so it does. The time that we start does vary based on season. So we try and go out around sunrise. So in winter, that's usually around about 6:30 in the morning. It's as we get closer to summer, it's more likely to become 5:30 in the morning. Usually go out for approximately 3 hours. It depends on what we're seeing. Come back, have breakfast. Lunch is always available if guests want it. Many times we don't actually have lunch. MalaMala does brunch, so they have a slightly different way of doing it. And then in the afternoons, during winter, usually going out around 3 or 3:30, and coming back just after sunset, which is around 6:30, and then going straight to dinner. In summer, as it gets closer towards summer, we generally go out 3:30, 4 o'clock, depending on the heat, and similarly come back after dark. So there's always a short drive in the evening with a spotlight to see if we can actually find any sort of more specific nocturnal creatures. So yeah, so that's sort of the typical day.
Awesome, and lots of fun in between when you're out and about. Oh,
Absolutely.
safari is the best. Awesome. Okay, this is the last question we'll take for today, and it is an important one. Can you elaborate on mosquitoes and other potentially biting insects?
Yeah, so because we're operating in the winter months, there's a lot less insects around. All of the areas that we go to are considered relatively low risk malaria. We would never say that there's no risk, but places like Madikwe, because it gets really cold in the winter, mosquito larvae do not survive. Similarly in Marataba. So if we are going to encounter biting insects, it's more likely to be down at MalaMala. But because it is much cooler during the time that we're there, there's generally a lot less biting insects. But there's always insect repellents at the various places that we go that people can make use of. So yeah, it really isn't a problem at the places that we go to and the time of year that we're there.
Well, great. So, Lorraine, we have reached the top of the hour here, so I'll go ahead and wrap up the Q&A portion, and I will turn it to you for any last closing comments.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, thanks very much again for the opportunity. And yeah, I'm really excited. So I think the first safari for me goes out second week in June. So yeah, just really excited to get going and to be able to share this beautiful country with NatHab guests. So thanks very much.
Absolutely, Lorraine. Thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. And I would like to thank everybody who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.